hello to everyone in the Classical Archives listening and watching audience. Today, it's my great pleasure to be speaking with Donna Weng Friedman and Kim Sherman. Donna is a pianist with whose work I'm sure you're familiar. Kim is a composer, and we're going to be talking with them today about a new work of Kim's and a new release of this work. The work is called Quiet Poems. So may I ask when and where will this be released, where so people can listen and know more about it? Either one of you can take this question.
Donna, why don't you talk about I Care If You Listen, because you're the one that made that connection.
Okay. Kim's pieces, Quiet Poems, is actually from a larger folio called Unfathomable Things. Quiet Poems is the first set, and this is all for solo piano. And we recorded it, and because the music is so filled with imagery, Kim decided to create a video, but it's not really your ordinary video. I don't think so. It's a beautiful, almost like a movie that is inspired by the music, and the imagery and the music actually weave together. And the videos are going to debut on I Care If You Listen on March 16th.
Terrific. Kim, anything to add to that?
Well, then the audio will be released after that on the 21st. And the audio is just simply on my SoundCloud, which we'll have a link in the notes.
Okay, terrific. Great. So what are these poems? Were these pre-existing poems? Are they actual verbal poems? What?
The inspiration for the three pieces are, I call them poems to nature, and it's not literal poems, it's musical poems. And the first one is called Water Circles. And the inspiration of it is like, when you throw a rock into a pond and then the circles just go like that. That's what that music is.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is called A Gesture. And it's kind of, to me, it's calling out to something or someone, just calling out and not hearing anything back. And then the third one is called Night Sounds. And it's those, when you think the house is quiet and you start hearing things,
Right.
like it's not really quiet. There are little details that you start to hear. And so that's the three pieces. And for me, they're, very connected with nature and just being.
Yeah. And I'd like to add that, all of this, the recordings, the video, this is all done during the pandemic when in-person concerts were canceled, which is why I think the videos are so special. And when you see them, you'll see what I mean, because it is a way for us to share our music, of course, virtually, but during a time when we had no audiences, so that the idea of sharing it, to nature, with nature, was, I thought, very beautiful.
And you had mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong, that there are still more poems and compositions in this folio.
Yes, I actually have it right here.
Okay.
It's called Unfathomable Things. And it's 15, I call it 15 stories for solo piano. And it's in sets. And the first set is Quiet Poems. The second set is called Four Moods. And these four pieces came about because after Donna and I met, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, she arranged some commissions for her students because she wanted there to be new music that would be available to young pianists. Um, and so I made four pieces. One is called Unwinding. One is called Fence because the young woman who is playing it is a fencer. One is called Reflections, and one is called Listening to the Moon. And both of the students were like very high achieving, talented, but really talked about I really like it when I can just go and be in the country and listen to the night, or so there's two of the pieces are very reflective of just kind of letting go and um, the flow of life.
Yeah. I'd like to add that, with the commissions for my students, the reason why this came about is because um, I've been, very much, a proponent of new music, but struggle every year to find new music that resonates with the younger generation. It's not that easy, because so much of it is a little more out there, and they respond so much better to melodies and beautiful harmonies. And I've worked with Kim before, and I knew right away that her music would be very appealing to this age group of talented, teenagers. So they, my students, these two young women, had a wonderful time because Kim would come into our piano lessons and talk to them about what their feelings were about the music, and worked with them really to create these beautiful pieces. And so I recorded those as well, and I think it's wonderful because it's not just for young kids. It's for everyone to enjoy and to play. But the younger generation can, definitely relate to it.
Um, so that's the second set, and the third set is called Travels, and the third and fourth sets are really I wrote them during the pandemic. And Travels was inspired by a friend of mine who she's a conductor on Broadway, and so suddenly had nothing. So she got in her, she has a car, she loves a road trip, and she just traveled all over the country, and
Wow.
she would like send me pictures. And so, you know, one of the one of the pieces is sorry called Drive, and one is there's one called The Kite, which is about a kite flying, and one is called Convergence, and it's about two people coming from opposite directions and meeting somewhere. And so the music sort of does this uh, opposites coming together gestures. One is called Unfathomable Things, which is the title, and one is called Destination. So that's the travels. And then the last set is called Three Walks, and it's about the first one is called Loop, and it's about walking the loop in Central Park. Um,
Nice.
one is called Evaporation Zone, and that's a walk I took with my friend in Colorado on what's the name of that mountain? Cheyenne Mountain. And on top of the mountain is where NORAD is.
Okay, yeah, I've been
So,
there. I've been there.
right? And everybody who lives there, it's referred to as the evaporation zone because if something happens and we get like, and we just, it was like this philosophical conversation around life and just evaporating. And that was just a satisfying conversation. Anyway, so I made a piece about that. And then the final one is called Bridge to Queens, and it's about walking over the Queensboro Bridge. So that's the folio. And the quiet poems are the first three pieces in it.
Okay. So may I ask if some piano students or piano teachers find their way to seeing this video, um, will these works be published that they can get and
Yes,
use in the studio?
I have published it myself, and it's available. You can order it through my website.
Okay,
Yeah,
terrific.
yeah.
So how long have you known each other, and how did you find your way to each other more generally, and also to do this project?
I met Kim in 2018. I was creating her music, her story. At that point, it was a concert series with Alison Charney, a soprano, who I had just actually performed on her series performances at Merkin Hall. And, you know, we became friends, and we were talking about our mutual interest in championing, you know, women composers. And at what point we decided, you know, let's commission a work, a song cycle, to celebrate Clara Schumann's, and that was at that time her upcoming centennial. And we figured that it would be great to commission a song cycle in her honor for soprano, piano, and violin. It's not a combination that's, you know, there's a lot of repertoire for. And Allison said, you know, I have the perfect composer in mind who I've worked with, I've commissioned from before. Her name is Kim Sherman. And I told Allison that I also had someone in mind to write the poems that would go with the music, Royce Flippen, who I went to college with at Princeton. And that's how I was introduced to Kim. And the Clara Cycle is this gorgeous, gorgeous song cycle, and we performed it. We actually premiered it at Princeton University at She Roars, their conference celebrating women, and then we performed it in, you know, all over New York, Steinway Hall, and
And
that's right, in Merkin Hall, and then finally, Allison and I were, you know, lucky enough to land our own miniseries on WQXR, Her Music, Her Story. And we had one of the episodes is dedicated to music by women of our times. And we had Kim's music, you know, performed on that as well. And so I got to know Kim pretty well during that period of time. And I recognized her music as being, you know, very, very easy to connect with. And that's why, you know, when I started, you know, talking about commissioning with my students new music, she was the first person I thought of to do so.
Wonderful. It's funny, when I first encountered just a written description of these works, the first thing that popped into my mind was, oh, Mendelssohn Songs Without Words. But, you know, Mendelssohn Songs Without Words, and I guess other people have also written songs without words, they're essentially accompaniments, and then there's a representation of a vocal line as the melodic line in the Schumann
Right.
pieces for the most part. But these are much, much different, right? These are more kind
they're
of,
very much piano pieces, very pianistic, I would say. Wouldn't you, Donna?
I would say definitely for the modern piano,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, definitely. But it's
There's a melodic element to it, but it's not like a melody with.
right. Some of them have more melodic, but the quiet poems I thought of for me was one of the most special sets because it teaches listeners how to listen not just to melody, not just to harmony, but to silence. You know, and I believe Mozart was the one who said that the silence was as important of a part in music than the notes. And the silence really, for me, in this set, is what ties everything together. You know, so for me, when I played the first piece, Water Circles, that was about the sound. I think Kim told me at one point that she wrote that the repetition, the looping of that theme that you hear in the beginning of Water Circles, and when I play it, I really feel not just the imagery of water circles, but I feel like I am embraced by the water. I really feel submerged, and I feel submerged by the sound. You know, it really is all about the sound enveloping me. And that's, you know, it's not about the piano anymore. It's about something so much more maybe spiritual, a deeper feeling, but I am completely, you know, enveloped and embraced by the sound in the first piece. And in the second piece, A Gesture, that's where the silence comes in. And the silence to me is the magical part of and what holds it together so beautifully. And it makes the audience, you know, want to hear what's happening next. It's incredible. And then the third piece, Night Sounds, as Kim said, you know, it's when you're in your house and you're listening to the sounds. And I have to tell you that the imagery that you will see in the video is exactly what I am thinking about when I'm playing it. We have a house upstate, right? I'm a city gal.
Hmm.
And the first time we went upstate and spent a night there, I was up all night listening to the coyotes, listening to, you know, the woodpeckers, listening to every little sound. And that's exactly how I feel about this third piece, Night Sounds. So, you know, to me, I connected with quiet poems on many levels. And, you know, I really can't wait for people to see the video and listen to the recording, because I think it's quite special.
No, it's fascinating. It's you know, imagery, I guess the imagery that goes through a composer's mind, and that sounds as though it's partially replicated by you, the performer. And I guess that people in the audience will also have kind of a similar recreation of imagery. But of course, thinking the esthetician Suzanne Langer said that creative process is to create an object or a work of art that contains emotional energy, and then it's up to the person who encounters it to take that into their own experience. So I guess what I'm asking is, it sounds as though there's kind of a synergy between the imagery that Kim and Donna feel and encounter in both composing and performing these works.
Yeah.
That's a really long, dumb question, but but anyway, that's what I was thinking. Lord help me. So
Well, to me, also, like part of the book, the published book of the music, has a description before each of the pieces,
okay,
so that I'm saying this is what I'm thinking. This is how I'm feeling about this, so that you know you can take that. I and it we did a concert of the whole book in September, um, and I spoke all of the descriptions before the pieces were played, and
okay,
it just let the audience was like on the edge of their seat, like really taking it in. And I think it's in some ways a way in to listening.
Yeah.
Like, I gave them a little image. It's not like a long paragraph, it's just like one or two sentences. And they just like listen to it with that image. And um, I thought that was a really interesting experience to kind of give that as well as the music, because I felt they were very attentive and like way inside of listening, which is very
Yeah.
satisfying for both of us.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of like program music, you know. I remember the first piece I ever performed of program music was the Bach Capriccio on the departure of her beloved brother. And he did not write a lot of program music, but this is, he was 19 when he wrote it. And he gave specific titles, and they were very cute. I mean, there was some of the titles were so long. He was very young. You know, he was very disappointed when he didn't get something. I mean, it's just very cute, those titles. But it does, as Kim said, it gives the audience a way in to what the composer is thinking about. And it is helpful. Although with quiet poems, Kim, and I hope you don't mind my saying this, I really didn't even need to read your titles to feel it, you know. So
are there, I'm sure there will be, but do you have dates for any upcoming performances of these, or will that unfold and happen?
well, you know, as you know, we have not had a lot of in-person concerts, and you know, several of my concerts that were scheduled in the fall and then in January and February were once again postponed because of the continuing variants, right? But I think things are looking good now. And on May 15th, I'm going to be performing quiet poems at the Tonry Cultural Institute in the heart of Greenwich Village in New York City. This will be actually my first in-person Heritage and Harmony concert. And I'm very excited about this, and I really look forward to it.
That's terrific.
And our dream is to take the whole book on the road.
Yeah, variants allowing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Kim, are there other performances of your work, either these works or others coming up that people would like to know about?
I'm just, you know what? I'm in the middle of writing an opera, and that's kind of taking up my whole mental space.
I can certainly understand why. What's the opera like?
It's okay. It's an adaptation of two stories by Willa Cather, and one is the first, like third, I'd say, of Song of the Lark, and the other one is a short story called The Sculptor's Funeral, and one is in the 1800s, and one is contemporary, and these two stories sort of are told side by side. And they have this thing in common, which is I am originally from the Midwest. I don't know. And there's something about being from that middle part of the country that you must leave. Well, some people must leave. It's sort of like you. That's the story of Taya in Song of the Lark. She loves this land. It's beautiful landscape, incredible. It's in your body, but you kind of have to get out of there to be who you are. And both stories deal with that kind of attraction and exit of a place and what that means. And it was presented to me by the librettist, and I just became kind of enthralled with the whole idea of the story. So it's interesting to be telling two stories side by side musically, and they each have their own language, but there's just this common feeling that happens between them.
That's really interesting. The other day in my car, I was listening to Sirius Opera, Med Opera channel, and there was a performance of Tales of Hoffmann on, which I know pretty well. I've been, attending performances of Tales of Hoffmann for like 30 years, but that's a very funny structure. It's like he tells stories of. It starts out with a prologue, and E.T.A. Hoffmann is the character, and he says he's going to tell stories of three great loves from his life, and he tells one after another, and they're really disconnected.
Yeah.
But it's funny that it kind of has hung on and kept a place in the repertoire, despite the fact that it's three unrelated stories.
But they're stories.
Yeah.
And the music's kind of nice too.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty fabulous stuff. But anyway, I'm sure Kim's new opera will be equally, if not more fabulous. So that, that kind of comes to the end of the questions that I had, but I would invite you to talk about anything that you like.
I'd like to share that we recorded these pieces on a piano that was owned by Richard Rodgers.
Wow.
And yeah, in fact, he composed, I believe, his, Sound of Music and a lot of his other, greatest hits on there. And that was, for me, really exciting. We did the concert on one of them. He had two pianos, and then we recorded on the other one. And it's not every day you get a chance to do that. So that was this, and the sound was beautiful, just beautiful.
The concert was at the home of Adam Gettle.
Okay.
So that's why there were those pianos, which are pretty, you can feel the history in those instruments. I think you can hear you. Did you feel that way, Donna? I mean, I do. When I touch it, I'm like, oh my goodness.
I think you can't help but feel that, it's a very special moment, even just looking at it. When I first walked in, I said, but they're beautiful pianos also. They really are.
I remember once seeing the piano in the south of Austria where or Mahler had sat and composed various things. And there was definitely some karma flying out of that instrument for sure.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Now, pianos are special instruments. I mean, all instruments are, but since I'm a pianist, I have this ritual. It's so funny. When I first got to Adam's place to try out the piano, he was witness to this. I introduced myself to the piano, and I talked to the instrument. Because you want to be friends, and that's what I do. And before every performance, I always, when I leave my apartment, I always talk to my piano, and then I make nice with the new piano, and because we're in it together, right?
Yeah.
And each piano has a very different personality. It's for me when I perform, unfortunately I can't bring my piano around with me like people bring their cellos and violins. So meeting the piano that I'm going to perform on for the first time, it's always nerve-wracking. It really is, because
Sure.
you just don't know the action, the sound. Will it fit with the repertoire? But once you get to know the instrument and you get to really get into the sound and how the action feels, then you can adjust everything that you need to. But to me, every piano is a living thing, and so that's how I approach that. So when I approached Richard Rodgers' pianos with a lot of reverence.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I wonder if anybody ever dares to play Vladimir Horowitz's piano, because just one
I've
piece.
tried it.
Oh, you
I've
have?
tried it, yeah.
What's that like?
So that to me was fascinating because
Where
it
is
was.
the piano? Where is it?
Right now, I don't know where it was. This is several years ago. It was at Steinway Hall. And so I was invited, being a Steinway educator, to come in and try out the piano and play on it for, just a few minutes. And we all know that Vladimir Horowitz had the greatest technique alive. I mean, what a virtuoso. But his piano, surprisingly, was incredibly easy to play on. Incredibly easy. So I was able to, do double thirds, passages like that, and it would just fly. Not that, what he does isn't extraordinary and better than everybody else can do, but the action had, was quite easy to deal with. Another piano that I didn't have the privilege of trying, and I was dying to, was Alicia De La Rocha. She was one of my role models because I'm 4'11" and she was 4'9" or 10, something like that. And we have small hands, and here she is, this like me, petite, and she's playing these huge pieces.
Right.
So it turns out she had a piano made for her where the keys were slightly smaller.
Wow.
Yeah. So, not that she didn't still have, a giant technique and, she was one of the greatest pianists, male or female. But, frankly, that could help me out a lot. you know, but so pianos are very very interesting, very interesting.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That really
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
It's oh, I was just going to tell another story. As I remember when I was in graduate school, I was studying singing with Phyllis Curtin, and I went off to drive her to do a benefit concert at Yaddo,
Mm.
and Ned Rorem was going to play the piano for her. So I remember going in, and Ned Rorem turned out to be just a really nice man. He was very kind, and but I was wandering around in Yaddo and up in the balcony of the concert hall where this benefit concert was taking place was a complete, at this point, recording studio and equipment from like the 1930s, all tube equipment, old microphones. Somebody had just installed this and left it there, and it was all I could think of was, boy, somebody should come in and record something with this equipment.
I wonder if they still have it.
I wonder.
Hmm.
That's like historical, like significant historical stuff.
Yeah.
There are people that collect that. So I hope they didn't throw it out.
I remember once talking to the recording engineer. I think it was Sedgwick Clark, who had done the early recordings of the Guarneri Quartet.
Mm.
And he said that he had used ribbon microphones that he said you really have to make a lot of noise for them to pick up the sound. And so he credited these ribbon microphones with being instrumental in helping establish that quartet's initial sound, because they just had to really produce a lot of sound.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, that's a I doubt that will not land on the cutting room floor, but anyway.
Yeah. There's one piano that I'm dying to hear, and I mean it. A piano, not a pianist. I don't know if you've heard about this. Is the Rachmaninoff recorded on a player piano, and that piano, from what I've heard, toured Europe, and people would line up to listen to and watch this piano, and the keys, would be moving to whatever it was that Rachmaninoff recorded on the piano roll. And they said it's
Wow.
extraordinary. I would give anything to find where that piano is and if it's still performing. But it's
I remember about 30 years ago, some record label produced a bunch of LPs of Busoni and people on those duo art rolls.
mhm.
And they were fascinating recordings to listen to. They
Yeah,
really were. Yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
yeah,
Well,
So,
Adam, who recorded these, has quite a collection of microphones that he's very
yeah.
proud of. And I should find out the name of the microphone that he used, but it's not, it's an old. He's collected them over the years that are like famous microphones.
wow.
Yeah. So he doesn't mess around.
I worked for a while in a publishing company with Craig Lucas, who ended up going on to write Light in the Piazza with Adam Gotto.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
that score is just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's terrific.
Gorgeous, gorgeous. And very different from Adam's grandfather, Richard Rodgers. He certainly holds his own as a composer and musician, but stunning music.
Yeah. No, it's wonderful. We went to the initial performance of that at Lincoln Center however long ago that was. It's pretty memorable and pretty terrific.
Yeah.
But maybe we should.
But we digress.
Yes, that's okay. Digression. These are some nice digressions.
Uh-huh.
I think it might be interesting to write a book about playing pianos.
Mm.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And to hear about how pianists, I'm sure they all have their own little things with pianos,
Have you ever read that book, Piano by James Barron?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's about the production of one Steinway Grand.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Wonderful
Fascinating.
book. Yeah. But anyway, so I should I should let you resume your days, I guess.